Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen nightmare fuel to combat dreams, the funding to overthrow corrupt governments, and radioactive therapy sessions. But we're going to kick things off this week with Aquaman number 3, written by Jeremy Adams with artwork by John Timms. Aquaman is like just awesome. I'm having so much fun reading this book right now because it feels so connected to everything that DC is doing. This feels like the pivotal book. It feels like the glue that's really holding everything together, whether it be the greater DCU or the new Absolute universe. Aquaman is kind of where it's at. They play with a lot of different ideas within this book, and I like that they're kind of expanding the scope of Aquaman and his mythos. Is now they're toying with the idea of the blue, the water being a magical element here, which is kind of like basically in tow with things like the green, like the Swamp Thing mythos, and kind of tying all these elemental things into godly powers that are taking place. Jeremy Adams is just crafting this really great classic feeling adventure tale, but making it feel very heartfelt and very earnest for the character of Aquaman. It almost feels like he's like mythic in the same way that you would like identify like Thor for the Marvel universe. It feels that kind of way, which makes it kind of like, I don't know, just like metal. It feels like a Led Zeppelin song undersea. So if you're not checking out Aquaman, I highly recommend it. With our next book, let's talk Batman Dark Patterns number 4, written by Dan Waters with artwork by Hayden Sherman. So this is a great like introduction to the next arc within our big Maxi series here, as we're delivered kind of like a completely new storyline. The part with the Wound Man has been completed. That part is in the rearview mirror. Now we're dealing with a new villain being Scarface. This series has done a great job kind of like really placing Batman in almost like a year 2, year 3 kind of time frame where he's not totally perfect Batman, but he definitely knows the ropes here, and he's definitely, doing things that are super heroic. Hayden Sherman's artwork, I mean, I don't know what else I can say. They're putting out fantastic work every single issue on this. Not only this, but every other book that they're working on as well. The layouts are fantastic, and Dan Waters is really crafting, again, a gothic story that just feels right for Gotham City. Also, the villain in here, Scarface, feels incredibly menacing in a way that's, being a ventriloquist dummy doesn't feel like it should be, but he makes it work and it feels right for the story. And when we're delivered kind of the mystery at the end, the cliffhanger, it makes it all the more worthwhile and all the more enriching. It makes you want to come back and find out what exactly is going on with this building that's housing a stolen Scarface doll. So, Batman Dark Patterns, absolutely brilliant. For our next issue, let's talk Dark Pyramids number 1, written by Paul Tobin with artwork by PJ Holden. So this all revolves around the storyline of a live streamer who is traversing a mountain to kind of like investigate a cavern and what's been going on with this cavern, as there's been some mysterious things going on. And during the live stream, his feed basically cuts off. So all of his audience is kind of none the wiser as to what's happening. One of those audience being his girlfriend, who now is set forth to traverse the mountain herself and investigate his disappearance. The issue was kind of okay, but if I'm being honest with you, it felt very juvenile for the things that they were trying to set forth. I think that there's a nice progression of the darkness and the nice progression of the events that are unfolding here, but the dialogue felt incredibly juvenile, especially knowing that we're talking about the disappearance and possible death of another individual. So the tone kind of was like fighting against one another. It wanted to be dark and gritty, but it felt like it was, something that was a little bit more lighthearted or geared towards a younger audience, not like young, but maybe of a teenage kind of age. So all in all, Dark Pyramids, it's kind of a hard recommendation here, but it's also the team behind Bunny Mask, which was like a critical darling from a couple years back. So if you enjoyed that, at the very least, dip your toes in and tell me what you thought about this one. Next up, we have Geiger number 12, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Gary Frank. This is the issue where I feel like we're starting to finally push forward with Geiger, as it's kind of been a slow burn. It's been a little bit episodic, and we haven't really found any character progression for Tariq Geiger. this is the issue that I've been waiting for, as he's kind of been paired up with Arden, now the glowing woman, who has complete control over her powers. And really, it's the conversations that they have, the back and forth as we are delivered like big moments within not only this series of Geiger, but the previous series as well, where we kind of learn more about the character when he's been able to control his powers, when he's lost control, and what she needs from him in order to basically take that next step and take control of what's going on with him. So they traverse over to a town where basically Arden has said, hey, these people here, basically they have their own little kind of end of the world cult, and they're the ones that have killed the doctor, who not only set up Geiger with his vest and ability to control the powers, but also did the same for Arden. So in a way, it was a test for Geiger, but it was also a way to seek retribution for the acts that have happened here as well. Gary Frank continues to deliver stunning artwork here that's like just the way he renders the landscapes and the people and the expressions, like top tier stuff. He's absolutely doing fantastic work here. Geiger as a character has definitely been pushed forward and pushed out of his comfort zone, which is exactly what he's needed in this issue. So I was so pleased to get this. Let me know your thoughts if you read this down below. All right, let's talk Iron Man number 6, written by Spencer Ackerman with artwork by Julius Ota. I was pleasantly surprised by this issue. Like, really surprised. I was like really kind of excited for this series of Iron Man, as like the previous run didn't really do it for me. It felt like it was just kind of dragging on for an extended period of time. And when I knew that the writer was taking over, that he had been like a journalist, specifically a war journalist, I really wanted to see how they would lean on that expertise and that set of knowledge and draw that into what's happening with Iron Man. This is the issue where that finally happens, as we're kind of like dealt this outcome where Tony is dealing with the one world under doom, event that's happening, and he's basically almost negotiating with terrorist organizations or just militaristic groups, talking about funding their efforts to basically take down the nation of Latveria. It was a really cool look at that. It almost made me like, it gave me feelings of like Charlie Wilson's War, things like that. If you've seen that movie, read the story, it's really awesome. I really like that approach, and that's exactly what I want from this writer. Keep doing this, and it's going to get better and better for the character of Iron Man. Historically speaking, the best writers of Iron Man have like leaned on those type of things, like those personal experiences. Looking back at stories like from Denny O'Neil, when he was like, really dealing with alcoholism, and Tony's struggle with alcoholism. I want the same from this writer. War, you know how to write about war. Put Tony in that landscape. The artwork has been leveling up here. Good, not great, but I think it was definitely serviceable for the story that was being told here. And I love how they drew all of the other characters in here to kind of help it kind of stay and feel comic booky when you have people like Black Widow, Crimson Dynamo, things like that. So while Iron Man didn't really take flight, I think maybe this could be the launch pad for something better. Next up, we have Mine is a Long, Lonesome Grave number 2, written by Justin Jordan with artwork by Chris Sheehan. I liked this issue a lot. In fact, I think I liked it even better than issue number 1, which I had a heck of a lot of fun with. Where issue 1 really leaned on like the supernatural aspect of the story, because our main character basically has been hit with a curse that is giving him days to live unless he can track down and kill the person who has put this curse on him. He's fresh out of prison. He was just trying to basically make his way back home, but now he's seeking vengeance, and now he needs to take out the entire family who's put this all forth. This issue now totally leans on the crime aspect of it, because it's also, while it's supernatural and there's curses, it's also a crime family that's doing this. So there's like, it's a basically a balancing act of those two ideas, and they fit together in this book so far really well. The artwork on here is like grimy and gritty, which works perfectly, but the color palette is arguably the thing that really makes this work, as it is dark. It is dark the entire time, but they're using like really cool purples to kind of like emulate that darkness here, and they're working with things. Again, it's a crime-driven book. The muzzle flash, the pistols that are going off really lighten the characters up here every single time they hit. So the artwork approach totally fits like the nature of the story and the themes that they're working with. Mine is a Long and Lonesome Grave so far is panning out to be maybe the best of the crime and supernatural books that I'm reading right now. Next up, let's talk The Moon is Following Us, number 7, written by Daniel Warren Johnson with artwork by Riley Rossmo. Nobody walks that razor's edge of like heartfelt and fun and dark and like really like morose better than Daniel Warren Johnson. This issue is definitely an example of that, as our parent characters, they understand the scope of everything that's going on here, and they take time, they take some moments of levity on this where they can kind of just take a breath and kind of like reassess what's going on if they've now teamed up with the nightmare creatures, and they kind of have a back and forth as there's an understanding of the reasoning behind a nightmare, and where dreams, potentially the good ones, have sacrificed themselves. We all know that dreams eventually do die off. Nightmares teach us lessons. The other part of this series is that the parents are also coping with the influence that they've had on the dreams and nightmares of their child, and how they need to let go of some of the things that they've harbored and carried too long, and how that's actually affecting their daughter, both in the real world and now in this dreamscape where they're doing battle to save her. Really fantastic artwork here. I feel like Riley Rossmo, given the opportunities and the right issues, is really soaring in this series. It's just so much fun. And again, it's all about that razor's edge that he's walking. You will laugh out loud and you will cry. That's like the hallmarks of a great Daniel Warren Johnson story. So, The Moon is Following Us, number 7. Really great stuff. With our next issue, we have Phoenix number 9, written by Stephanie Phillips with artwork by Alessandro Miracolo. This book's kind of losing me a little bit here. I really like the series so far, and I like how they've been developing the character of Jean, but I feel like that character development is exactly what's missing from this issue. This is a heavy, heavy, heavy narration issue, and it's almost as if we're not getting that narration from the character of Jean. It's almost like we're getting it more so from an omniscient narrator. It could be maybe the Phoenix Force having its influence on Jean, but it doesn't feel that way, and it doesn't necessarily go with the narrative of the story either, as she has basically given part of the Phoenix Force power to this other character, Adani, to maybe help her on her path, which also, kind of doesn't work out in her favor either and turns her into a more villainous character. We spend so much time in the head and the narration of this that we don't really get a lot of character development. We don't get a lot of character growth, and it kind of stalls this issue out for me. The one thing I can say is that the artwork remains really, really nice in here. I love what Alessandro is doing on this. There's some great pieces that he works with here. Specifically, there's this one where we're talking about reality warping things happening all around Adani and Jean Grey. And like the spread on that was like absolutely awesome. I love what they were doing with it. Honestly, it's probably one of the better looking Marvel books that I've seen here in the last couple weeks here at least. So the Phoenix, I feel like it has room to still kind of keep me on pace here, but it needs to definitely do something with that next issue. All right, let's talk Redcoat number 10, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Brian Hitch. The best outing of, the Ghost Machine universe continues to be my favorite of the Ghost Machine universe. Redcoat is awesome. We've gotten to spend so many time with these one-shot issues now where we've kind of like, we had our first arc where we were delivered Albert Einstein and we got to spend time with Johnny Appleseed. Now we get to spend time with Annie Oakley. And I love how each one of these people, these historical figures, are shaping the character of Simon Pure and making him be more heroic and showing him that he has the ability to do so rather than dragging him through the process. That's what's fantastic about this. It really gives, a moment for Simon to shine, as there is basically a marksman competition between Annie and him, and they go toe to toe. But when push comes to shove and they actually need to save the day, Simon actually is able to step up to the plate, even though he doesn't believe in himself. He's kind of he's pushed into a corner where he has no choice, and he delivers. And that's what I'm looking for from a great heroic journey character arc. That's what we're getting in this book. Brian Hitch also delivers every single page of this as well. There is just like every camera angle that he uses feels right. All of the set pieces just work. They make the pacing flow within this book. And again, the rendering of the characters just fits. Everything looks really tight, even though I feel like the characters are becoming more and more, I don't know, akin to maybe people in real life. I'm pretty sure that Charlie Hunnam is going to be the actor if this ever becomes a real thing, in Hollywood as a movie. But overall, I have no complaints on this. Redcoat is awesome. It's a historical romp that just feels charming, and it takes us on that journey that makes it so worthwhile. Next up, we have Santos Sisters number 8, written and drawn by the duo of Greg and Fake. If you dig Archie style hijinks, this book is probably going to be for you, as we're delivered 3 stories within this issue that really just kind of revolve around like some really weird and wacky hijinks that you would expect from Archie, but like a little bit more adult themed. So we have the first issue, or I'm sorry, the first storyline that starts with kind of an unnecessary militia training event where a girlfriend is looking for her boyfriend who happens to have joined this militia, and they kind of come to blows over this, and the sister duo have to kind of work their way between them to figure out the best solution for all of these things that are happening. The second storyline is a continuation where there is a mysterious delivery here that's being made that maybe possibly could be shady, but it gets under the nose of the president of the United States, who wants to intervene and kind of get this suitcase. All the while, the sisters need to make sure that their friends are protected who are making this delivery. And our final story revolves around an old folks home, a senior community, where it looks like the pills that they're taking ain't just for their heart medication. It's maybe possibly a little bit more than that. So again, it's kind of like in the vein of Archie. It's kind of fun. It's tongue in cheek. It's lighthearted, and I think they know what they're dealing with, albeit again with a little bit more of an adult theme to it. So again, if you dig Archie, give Santos Sisters a try. You might like it. All right, let's talk Space Ghost number 11, written by David Papos with artwork by Jonathan Lau. This was a great 1-2 punch paired with the previous issue, as now basically we've had this mysterious character from the future present to Space Ghost and the 2 children that, there's some harrowing events that are going to be coming down the pipeline here. Hard times are going to be hit. And this is starting to deliver on those promises, as it's a bad guy extravaganza. Everyone within the Space Ghost mythos, if you were a bad guy, they've combined forces and they are coming after Space Ghost full force, all under the funding of RoboCorps as well, which makes it even more dastardly. The kids are also kind of dealing with the fact that Space Ghost is a little bit negligent as a caretaker right now, too, as he's going off on his missions and he's kind of keeping them at arm's length and not delivering on the promise to keep them safe and train them to keep themselves safe. So they're kind of being pulled apart a little bit more, but I love how the issue progresses and allows them to kind of rekindle the relationships that are needed to show that they care for one another and hopefully invoke change, long-standing change for all of them together. Shout out to Nick Comic Culture for putting me on this series, man. I've had so much fun with it. I'm so glad that I went back and read the entirety of it. This is way more fun than I would have ever anticipated a book like Space Ghost to be able to do. All right, with our next issue, we have Transformers number 18, written by Daniel Warren Johnson with artwork by Jorge Corona. We are in the heat of battle from the get-go of this issue, and we never leave. That's exactly what this issue is being on the battlefront, being in the heat of war, and seeing the ramifications that come forth from that as well. It's devastation everywhere here, and like everything, the energy level, the kineticism, the devastation, everything is cranked up to 11 here in the classic way that you would expect Daniel Warren Johnson to do. It doesn't do a lot to develop the characters and develop the growth, but it sets forth a lot of cool things here. We get to see the Transformers be a little bit victorious, but also basically there's small victories and small defeats at every single corner, everywhere that you look. The most important part about this issue, though, is that it feels like it sets the place for big, bold things to happen in the future. This ends on a cliffhanger that you need to read, basically, to kind of see where your excitement level is going to be. Mine, just like I said, that the basically event itself, all of the devastation is cranked up to 11. My excitement for the future issues is cranked up to 11 as well. So Transformers, I would never expected to say this, Span, but it's like one of my favorite books right now. And with our runner-up book of the week, let's talk Absolute Superman number 5. Written by Jason Aaron with artwork by Rafa Sandoval. We finally kind of get the culmination of the origin story, if you will, of this absolute version of Kal-El, as we've now spent a lot of time on Krypton, and we finally gotten to the destruction of Krypton, which happens much later in Kal-El's life in this version of the story. And we kind of see the things that basically that the parents put in place to try to save as many people, and we see just how dastardly the science council was on Krypton as they tried their best basically to tamp down anyone that they didn't want to leave the planet because they knew the devastation that was going to take place. We see that there's quite a few people that have tried to escape, and as the planet is exploding, Kal-El definitely makes it through. What we don't know is if there's any other Kryptonians. It kind of plants the seed that we know one survived, but we don't know that they all didn't survive. So there's more things that are going to be coming down the pipeline. As we spend time in present day as well, we see the anger that Kal-El feels, and through the actions that have taken place on Krypton and everything he experienced, we understand that anger so much more. But on top of that, we also understand his resolve. We understand his, I don't want to say humanity, but that's the best word I can think of, his humanity and his hope. Now, does it fit the same bill as his anger quite yet? Not necessarily, but we can see how that character has a path to grow and get to the point where he becomes more so the Superman that we traditionally know. On top of that, I love the narration from his suit, which is basically almost like a symbiotic being, and we know now is also the ship that allowed him to leave Krypton and survive while he got to Earth. Really fantastic issue. Again, it kind of like puts a bow on the origin story and is going to allow us now to move forward and find out more about Kal-El as he is on Earth and is navigating now back to Smallville. So Absolute Superman is absolutely the best issue of this series so far. And with our top comic of the week, let's talk Assorted Crisis Events number 1. Written by Dennis Camp with artwork by Eric Zawadzki. This was kind of unexpected because I kind of didn't know what to expect from this book, as we knew from basically like the premise and the solicits that it was going to be dealing with, crisis level events, things that we deal with in the big two type of books, the big bold event series that we get where there's devastation everywhere. Well, in the storylines within this book and specifically this issue, we learn that these events happen on a daily basis, minute to minute, and it's kind of just become everyday things where there's going to be temporal anomalies and there's going to be dimensional portals opening up and there's going to be devastation and oddities that happen at a moment's notice. And we get to see that. We get to live that through the eyes of just a regular old human being, just a bystander, not a superhero, but just a person having to live their life through these things. And I think that viewing these comic book style events through those eyes is really enriching, especially being that we're readers of comic books. We would be that person dealing with these circumstances. So it's kind of cool to be in those shoes and kind of see would I make that same decision? Would I feel the same way as our main character does here? On top of that, it's a really kind of scathing look at society and the way that we as a society would be able to deal with these things, as we've learned that, we're very resilient, but also we can kind of put blindfolds on ourselves as well and kind of just, brush past, big, incredible, difficult situations and kind of as a coping mechanism, just kind of like look past it. We kind of see that playing out in this issue as well. And this is going to be an anthology, so we're going to see new characters and new things taking place within the same shared world, but we're going to see new zany things that are happening as each issue progresses. Overall, Dennis Camp has become one of my absolute favorite writers in comics right now. This issue definitely spells out why that is. So Assorted Crisis Events, if you're a comic appreciator, definitely read it because it was absolutely worthy of top comic of the week. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.